Here we are back as we talk about that situation that is brewing between Ukraine and Russia, creating quite a situation, not just for those two entities in this Eastern Europe, but for all of us when it comes to the commodities that oil and even Ukraine produce, from wheat to oil products to steel and more. Well, joining us for that discussion as we look at how it affects us here in Ghana, we have Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso, an international relations analyst. And we're also joined by Dr. Frank Adoma. He's a medical student in Ukraine. He joins the conversation as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We have Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso via phone. Good morning, Prof. Right. Let me say a good morning to Dr. Frank Adoma as well, who joins us from Ukraine, from the bowels of where all of this is happening. Doc, good morning. Please unmute and let me hear you.
Good morning, sir.
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling so sad because initially we thought this thing was a joke, but right now we are realizing the gravity of what's happening here, and it's very, very tense here. Even though we are trying to calm ourselves down, but like we've been seeing these things on TV when we're back home, but now we are in the middle of something that we never thought we would ever encounter in our lives.
What is the current time in Ukraine as you speak to us?
All right, so as I speak to you, it's 9:36 a.m. here.
And for how long have you been holed up? Where exactly are you?
All right, I'm at the western part of Ukraine in a city called Ivano-Frankivsk.
Right, and so you're still in the institution where you study?
Yes, I study at the Ivano-Frankivsk National Medical University in that same city.
How long have you been reading medicine?
All right, I'm in my first year now. I was almost finishing first year. Yeah.
Right, and this must be very hard for you to take. But I don't want to skip this question. I just want to find out. It is true that you didn't expect this to happen, but why Ukraine as a destination for studying medicine? Why not Ghana, for example? Why did you opt for Ukraine?
Okay, so as a lot of us know, getting to read medicine in Ghana is quite difficult because you would have to get the best of grades. Even with that, you have to go through a series of interviews and sometimes entrance exams. And even with that, sometimes your slot is not 100% secured. So with the passion we have to be medical doctors, we sometimes look at other options in other countries where we can get the easy access to be able to train as medical doctors to help our nation. So the decision to come to Ukraine was made on the basis of the fact that we were not able to get to read medicine in Ghana due to the very tough cutoff point and the requirement that you need to get there. Yeah.
And so that was what prompted you to, explore the Ukrainian option. And obviously, like you say, you didn't foresee that any of this would happen.
Yes, please.
When you started hearing about the fact that, U.S. intelligence reports, European intelligence reports that Russia likely would attack Ukraine, what measures did you take? I mean, how did that make you feel?
All right, so we started hearing about this troop build-up somewhere around November. So we drew the attention of our school authorities, and they made us know that Russia has already been in conflict with Ukraine since 2014. So it has been something that has been there. Like it's not an imminent threat, but it's something that they are trying to solve diplomatically. But then it's not something that is going to spread to the whole of Ukraine. But as time went on, when we got to somewhere around January, things became very, very, very serious because we were hearing a lot of reports from U.S. intelligence that there might be an invasion by the Russian into Ukraine. So at that moment, we approached our school authorities once again, and they made us aware that everything is under control and that diplomatic measures are being taken to be able to solve this situation. So with that, we still kept on confronting the school, but then because we are under the authority of the school, we can't just make decisions on our own because we are students in the institution. So whatever decision that is made, the school has to give us the green light to be able to move to wherever, maybe come back to our nations for some time. But they were downplaying the fact that the fight was going to happen until it happened. So we saw the signs. We tried to talk to the school authorities, but since we don't have the veto to come home, and because we are students of the institution, we had to abide by the rules of the institution. That's why we were here till now.
Well, hold it right there for me, Dr. Aduma. I'll be coming right back to you. But let me also engage Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso, who analyzes these issues, giving it an international perspective. Prof, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation.
You're very welcome.
Right. I mean, this has been, brewing for, some say, up to 8 years since 2014. Any surprises as now, Russia has finally taken on Ukraine in this latest crisis that we're seeing? Are you surprised at all?
I am not particularly surprised. My surprise is the extent. I thought they would only enter maybe and support the enclaves that have declared independence, that is Luhansk and Donetsk, as they did in 2008 with Georgia. The Russian-speaking elements in Georgia declared their own independence as Abkhazia and Ossetia, and Russia used the pretext of Georgia wanting to join NATO to teach them a lesson and force them not to join NATO. I thought that would be the case, and then diplomacy would work. And so that is why I'm a little surprised that even cities like Kyiv are being attacked.
Right.
It shows the resolve of looking to put an end to NATO's expansion. I mean, it's going to be a kind of a no-nonsense kind of show of force. So I was surprised about that. But I wasn't surprised at all that they marched up and warned NATO. For the past 3 years. Putin has been emphatic on NATO's expansion. Since 1997, the Russians have always been opposed to NATO's expansion. We were even questioning the continued existence of NATO as a military organization because the Warsaw Pact had imploded. I mean, they had liquidated the Warsaw Pact, so there can't be two camps anymore. NATO said, well, they have an agenda and that Russia could even join them. Against who? So the question of the international configuration of security is what Putin is questioning. My fear is the big alliance between Russia and China, supported strongly by North Korea and maybe some other countries. We don't know why.
And that in itself, poses quite, because only yesterday we heard of how China was making some overtures, so to speak, not fully supporting what Russia had done, but lending them at least some international support that they've not got from the West, that they've not got from within Europe, and all of that. But is that argument valid when Russia says we also feel threatened in a way and we don't want NATO getting too much clout in our region, what used to be the former Soviet Union? And so, like Putin has said, this is not a war to destroy Ukraine, but it is a war to demilitarize Ukraine. Is that a valid argument? Because I've heard analysts across the world condemn that and say it is baseless. What do you think about that?
That's a very valid argument if you understand international relations. Look, let's not joke about this. Security is not a thing to joke with. Why did the USA invade Grenada in 1982? A small country with 10,000, just 10,000. What a threat did it pose to the US? But just because Maurice Bishop wanted to be socialist and was aligning himself with his country with Cuba, and they were building an aerodrome which could take jumbo jets, America said, no, we can't have any other more Cuba. And they invaded the country, killed the prime minister. It was an act nobody could understand, but they did. Where security is concerned, there's no morality. When any country is threatened, the sort of actions the country will take, you can't believe. So Russia has been warning since 1997, NATO, why are you still existing? Why are you expanding? And watch out, check the map. And you will see that from Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, all the way down to Ukraine, NATO wants all. For what and against you? Any country, America would have done that. Check Benny Sanders, his speech. He said, we cannot be hypocritical about Russian interests. And that is, in international law, the realist conception of security. Again, some two other generals said, we would have done it. So, we need to be very careful. Diplomacy doesn't work well. Unfortunately, global institutions are impotent to handle such a situation.
And you speak of how, we've heard of United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres, for example, suggest that Russia should cease immediately its invasion of Ukraine. But of course, like you've also rightly pointed out, our international organizations, even as far as the United Nations, does not have the wherewithal or the clout to stop such activities. In this instance, would you say then that it is NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that has triggered this, that NATO, whether wittingly or unwittingly, is responsible for what we are seeing in Ukraine?
I strongly suspect so. I strongly suspect that even if NATO was continuing to exist, those countries they are grabbing, the connotation are created in the minds of Russia and even China. And they look, they are preparing something other than, just NATO defending the West. And so, yes, that's another. But then again, the United Nations, for most of us have been talking and writing about that. The international architecture put in place in after the war. It's no longer useful. It's incomplete. That international architecture can no longer sustain what is happening because the amount of arsenals that are being piled up, supersonic missiles, and the rest, Russia has the best of them. Only last week we were displaying one. China, what they have. Then we are afraid that if a third world war breaks out, the world will be no more. But the United Nations is not capable of handling such a situation. So there must be something else to be able to assure everybody that there's no need for any war. That is not coming. However, everybody is rather preparing for war. Everybody. And in the realist sense of the whole kind of thinking. So if you are closer to my door, or if you are doing anything you put maybe even in London, and if I see it can really reach me, I misbehave. Or just take North Korea. The way they have been held in, the guy started with question 1, 2, 3. When they reached question 4, the missile that could hit Guam and Seattle, then America decided to talk to them. Because now they have the capability of hurting America. That's the reality of security. So these are issues we don't toy about. Russian behavior ethically may be wrong, but then they cannot sit down when they are overwhelmed, when they are no situation. So that is the thing. That's the reality.
So from where you said there is some justification for this invasion of Ukraine, you feel it is justified?
Well, I wouldn't call it justified. I was thinking that the forward person, we call it in security, the forward persons of the military, 100,000 people, and then secondly the deterrent measures that we were taking. I didn't think that they will go to the third level of what we call in war compelling. They are now compelling the whole world. They are compelling Ukraine back up, back up. The world shut up.
Right.
Compelling.
We've heard Putin say that if other entities get involved, they'll see terror like they've never seen before. But we've also heard from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has said, I've asked 27 European leaders whether Ukraine will be in NATO. Everyone is afraid. No one answers. They are not even in NATO yet, and this is the sort of backlash. But even before you come back in, and then I also bring in Frank Adoma, talking about the military strength and parity or disparity between the two entities, you would see that it is quite a bit of a mismatch. If you look at from troops to attack aircraft to attack helicopters to tanks, let's look at tanks, for example. Ukraine has some 2,596 of them, these armored vehicles. When you look at Russia, it has 12,240, about, almost 5 times that same number. You look at towed artillery, 2,040 on the part of Ukraine, 7,571 on the part of Russia. So this is a military mismatch of great proportions. And we've also heard from Zelensky talk about the fact that just today, in his latest address, that this must stop and that negotiation is the way forward. Russia, sooner or later, will have to talk to Ukraine. Is it too late for that to happen, Prof?
No. Anytime war breaks out, the negotiations still, I mean, even though the bullet is flying, the negotiations always go along. And that is exactly, I think, what Russia wants. They want to just compelling, and then from that position, they could negotiate better. Of course, Ukraine is not a match at all to Russia where these things are concerned. And even Europe is afraid, because if it goes to total war, I think what Russia is doing is a limited war. If they want a total war and Europe is involved, well, the whole of Europe will be incinerate. But that is not what I think Russia wants right now. The point is they want to make sure Ukraine does not enter NATO before they do what they have done. Because if Ukraine were a NATO member already, then the whole of NATO could have marshaled their arsenal against Russia in international law. But now that Ukraine is not a member, they could do what they are doing. They would have been more measured if Ukraine were already a member. And they want to prevent that. They don't want Ukraine to be there before they act. So, yes, it's a big mismatch. And in war, you don't just think of, as I said, Maurice Bishop country was with only 10,000 population. America sent 7,000 people. It's a mismatch. So in war, you don't think about what. To do what you want to do and get back.
This in effect is a preemptive measure to even prevent.
Exactly, preemptive measure. Preemptive measure. Yeah.
Right. Let me also engage Ben Boateng, who is a PRO for nukes in Ukraine. Ben, if you can hear me, thank you for joining the conversation. Hello, Ben.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you for joining us on this all-important conversation. Where in Ukraine do you find yourself?
I'm in the city of Sumy, which is in the eastern part of Ukraine.
Right, so you're close to the areas being bombarded then?
Yes, my city is one of the most attacked cities as we speak. So,
tell me, Ben, what is the feeling like? Paint a picture for us about how it feels to be in the middle of all of this bombardment. Are you afraid? How are you surviving? Paint a picture for us.
Well, the truth of the matter is that tensions have risen over the last 24 hours. This whole thing started, I would say, late January, and it gradually early February, and then we are now here. For the last 24 hours, the feeling it's a feeling of anxiety, and the people are a bit worried. Why? Because when the bombing starts, you need to know that right now the action from Russia is in, and there is absolutely nothing that we don't have to look at it as if it's just one of the rumors. For my city, the situation now is that the Russian army is attacking the military bases. That is what I can confirm for you. I've spoken to various presidents across different cities of Ukraine, and we can confirm that there have not been any action against any civilian buildings, for example, houses or public places, supermarkets, maybe gatherings. There hasn't been anything.
But we have figures, Ben, pointing to the fact that some civilians too are among those who have fallen.
You have
that there are some civilian casualties.
Yes. Now the thing is that I was coming to a point. So the attack has been on military bases. If you have heard the president say that. Zelensky say that they are going to give weapons to whoever is ready to defend the nation. And so if you would find yourself in this line, you don't expect the Russian army to take it lightly with you. But my point is that they have not attacked or ventured into civilian houses, public places. Maybe these people you are talking about are people that decided to stand in the way of Russia because they had weapons, and then the Russia army probably decided to deal with them. But I can confirm for you, because the situation across the cities is what I'm saying. They have not attacked any civilian houses, broken into any houses and tried to do anything of that sort. That's not the case.
How has this changed your way of life? I'm sure before this, you could go out, purchase food items, go out, hang out with your friends, maybe other African students or Ghanaian students and all of that. How has this impacted or changed all of that?
Yeah, for now, I mean, we are extra careful now. There is no movement, should I say, outside, not too much movement outside, because earlier you could go out freely, you could purchase things from the grocery stores, you could meet in small numbers, of course, because of the pandemic. But right now, I mean, we can't do that. We are extra careful because of the fact that if you are in my city now, you have seen footages of the fact that there has been bombing in places. So now everybody is restricted to his abode. And what right now we have been advised is that we need to look for what we call bomb shelters. And if I explain bomb shelters, if you look at the architecture of the Ukrainian buildings, because of the history of the Soviet Union, during these wars, what they always did was that people will go underground, create an underground within apartments or buildings, and these are termed as bomb shelters, so that people can seek refuge or safety during these attacks. And so right now, that is the situation within the various places. Relevant authorities have been encouraging people that find these bomb shelters. And as you are going, please, you need what we call an emergency bag. An emergency bag means that as a student, as I am, I need to have all my certificates. If it's WASI, if it is BEC, or anything that brought me to Ukraine, I need to have this. I also need to have my residence permits, which in Ukrainian we call the post-veka. Then I also, of course, have to have my Ghanaian passport. I need to have some cold insulators, so the thermal wear that we can wear, because now you are found underground and you expect it to be more colder than if you are in your room. Then you also need to have your transcripts, because in the worst case scenario, you have transcript that you have studied up to this year, and then if you have to continue in a different country or whatnot, you can provide this document to that effect. Then also you need to have, basically you need to have other documents with you, or a couple of dresses just in a small bag that you can carry along. This is what we call the emergency bags. And then if you have water, if you have just some groceries that can fit the bag, you keep it, and then you go under these places for safety. So now the movements have really stopped. The situation again we have is that we have an emergency. The president has declared a state of emergency. So that means that the air space is not working. On the land, major transport services are not working. Train is not working. The buses are not working. So movement within the cities and even from city to city is not working. So right now, I mean, people are 90% people are found in their homes, and that is the situation on the ground.
Right, so everybody trying to avoid going out and maybe suffering the effect of that. But that would also mean getting nourishment, food and drink is a very tricky affair. Do you have food? Do you have drink with you? How are you able to manage to sustain yourself in that sense?
Yeah, when we heard this information, we sent a communique to the Ghanaian student in Ukraine that this is the situation. So you have to quickly try and get to any grocery store and stock up food if you are living within your house. So yesterday, between I'd say 7 a.m. and about 2 p.m., most people, I spoke to different people across different cities. Most people went out, tried to get a lot of foods into their home, so that within these trying times they can depend on this for livelihood. But also the situation on the ground is that at a point in time, we realized that our ATMs are not working. The ATMs only work for citizens in the country. The foreigners, we can't access the ATM. So it became a worry to us, because now you can't cash out. So, if you are buying something, it's very difficult. So now, for those who were not able to get their food yesterday, for my city and from what I've heard from different cities, still people are able to go to the grocery stores, but I would say not everyone. Not everyone, because Sumy, you can go out. Cities like Lviv and Chernivtsi, you can also go out. Other cities like Ivano, you can go out. And so the situation for going out and getting food is different in different cities.
Hold it for me, Ben. Maybe right before I let go of you, Ben.
Yes.
What are you studying in Ukraine? Are you also a medical student?
Yeah, I'm a medical student, yeah.
Medical student. All right. Let me go to another medical student in the person of Frank. Frank, so how are you surviving? Do you have enough in terms of food and drink to sustain you for a number of days at least? Is Frank still with us? Well, it appears we're having some challenges with Frank. I was trying to find out whether he as well, had enough to get him by if for a few days he had to be holed into maybe one of those safe areas, one of those shelters, for example. Let me get back to Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso. So looking at all of these dynamics that we've been considering, and now Russia is firmly, leaving its footprint in Ukraine. You have said that it is not too late to start talking about the situation and to find out what the way forward could be. But there's also the tricky bit about sanctions, and they've come in thick and fast from Europe, the rest of Europe, France, the UK. There's also the United States, there's Canada. Yesterday, we saw the effect on stock markets across the world, and Russia itself suffered a lot yesterday. What do you think about some of the sanctions, not so economic, but some of the sanctions that have been leveled against Russia for now?
Well, the sanctions can be biting. Every sanction bites a little, but every sanctioned country has a way of obviating the sanctions. Every country, they retaliate. The citizens understand. And let us not make a mistake. The Russian system, the Chinese system, these are systems that are monolithic in the sense that they could always explain to they could always suppress their defense. They could always make sure that the country is in a war situation. So this is what we have. So no matter how biting the sanctions, the effect will not yield what the West might think they want. And
are you suggesting the sanctions as they stand now are going to prove futile?
Come again?
Are you suggesting the sanctions as they stand now, or maybe even in future, are going to prove futile against Russia?
Not necessarily futile. I said they will be biting a little, but they will also find a way of insulating themselves. But again, I was trying also to say that there is the boomerang effect of sanctions, because firms that deal with Russia from Europe, firms that deal with Russia from North America, they are all also going to suffer. And so the suffering is a two-way affair. No sanctions have been set in such a way that the country has changed. Iraq, Iran, North Korea, Russia itself, China, there are still sanctions that are operating before this time on Russia, for example. But other allied states or non-allied states, we all suffer. Ghana has suffered, for example, from the sanctions on Russia. Gazprom came to Gazprom has the largest amount of gas in the world, and they were going to sell to Ghana at very cheap, ridiculous price. And we signed agreement about 4 years ago or so, 5 years ago, and it was going to help us in our industrial whatever, But because then the following year, Gazprom was part of the sanctioned entities in Russia. We couldn't fulfill that agreement we signed with Gazprom. Again, we were going to buy helicopters also. Helicopters we bought in 2005 or so for our military, which were very good for strategic lifting, which we used in our peace operation. We were going to buy some more from the same source, Russia, which the United Nations loved. Unfortunately, because of sanctions on that entity, again, we couldn't. So we also suffered from the sanctions.
So, Prof,
will also suffer. Yes,
it's a two-way street. Yes, I get that. I mean, when you impose sanctions, for example, if these European countries, the UKs, the Frances and others, and now even outside of Europe, Asia, Japan, and all of that, with the sanctions they're imposing, Europe, for example, is going to feel the effect because it gets about 40% of its gas supplies from Russia. So it will feel the effect. We've been told that the Qataris can only foot about 15% of that.
Exactly.
Where do you get the remaining 25%? So I get all of that. But even now, we know that in Russia itself, technology that is needed by a lot of their companies, chips and all of that are produced from the United States and the rest of Europe is not going to them. And we've been told also that, some of the strength of their economy is artificial, almost like a bit of the Chinese, example, that it is not as real as you see it, and it will not be too long before the effect is felt. We know about the budget surpluses running into about 50 billion, but how long will that last? So when you weigh them, who would suffer more? The Russia, which is feeding the rest of the world with wheat and, petroleum products, gas and all of that, or the other countries in the West and in the rest of Europe?
As I was saying, whether Russia suffers more or not, it is a prelude to innovation, and the systems are the ones which might suffer, because the Western system is such that when there is suffering, they blame government, and there is turmoil. The government is overthrown by ballot or whatever it is. Look at Italy. How many times do they change prime minister? The regularity of it and that kind of thing. And it affects the economy. So I'm saying no matter how Russia will suffer, and they will suffer anyway, and the monolithic nature of the state system will make them bear it better than those of us who may rely on something from them. So sanctions have never fully worked. Iran would have imploded long ago. But then we have survived up till now. And within that period, negotiations continue. Negotiations continue until we have some modicum of some level of peace. So I believe that talks will still go on. Maybe Ukraine will back away from entering NATO. Maybe the Russians will also, demand. So all these things the sanctions, let me tell you, are bargaining chips.
Right.
Always sanctions are bargaining chips for a certain negotiated end. And so it's a way of also a deterrent measure. And the other side also will have to consider how it is suffering in order to arrive at a negotiated settlement.
Of course, as you mentioned, these countries, we even have the example of Cuba as well, and the embargo on them and how they've survived for over five decades. But talking about Gazprom and its endeavor, what we could have had in Ghana, there's also the Nord Stream 2, which Germany, for example, has suspended. Will there be any trickle down or ripple effect of that on, say, Africa in substance? Because this is more of a European thing. Do you think that could feed into our woes in Africa?
It is. It is going to affect us very seriously. Oil prices are galloping upwards. And, most of Africa is oil dependent. And that will affect our economies. Our economies are going to wobble a little and grow slowly. And again, those countries on whom we rely for something else, or who also rely on Russia, and who also rely on gas, whatever it is, will be affected, and therefore we will be affected, especially the question of gas, the question of oil. And if you watch out, Germany is a little very cautious, quiet somehow, but hiding behind Europe to do what they, because the North Stream
you say Germany has been a bit quiet and is hiding behind Europe to do what?
Exactly.
To do what exactly? To what end?
Come again?
To do what exactly? To what end?
No, the point is that Russia can just cut off gas. In fact, Putin mentioned something like that. They can cut off gas to Europe, and the number of people who die will be anything. Just cut off gas. Just, I won't even send it. By the time 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, when Europe finds an alternative, it will be too late. So that's number one, especially when they get to the thickness of winter. That's number one. And then Russia can withdraw the amount it produces daily, if it is 4 million barrels a day and that kind of. If it withdraws this, then Saudi Arabia and others will have to augment that. If they don't, oil prices will just skyrocket. It happened once, as I said, President Kufuor's time, oil went to the highest ever level in history, $147 a barrel. And you all know how much we suffered before it started coming down and came all the way down to about $20 a barrel. So the point is this, that the oil politics Russia can play it and play it hard. Very, very, very hard.
Talking of that oil politics, maybe for the final bit before I move on to engage Ben and Frank once more, just focusing on that briefly. So we already have pretty high oil prices in Ghana, even in comparison to our West African neighbors. Do you foresee on the back of this that oil prices could inch up or maybe rise a lot more on the back of this Ukraine-Russia crisis?
Sure. Anytime there is a major instance, global hiccup like this, oil is the first to hiccup. The Yemeni war started inching up the oil until it subsided a little. And this is a major war. This is a major, not in intensity of war, but it's two giants of the world fiercely nudging each other, and you would know that they will use oil, especially when Russia has it. And if you watch out, since yesterday, we have almost hit the $100 mark, which means we're going to go up.
We've actually crossed the $100 mark. It's now at $105. Exactly.
So this is indicative of the very fact that oil is going to be one of the commodities that will be highly affected, and which will affect the global economy generally, the global economy of interest rates, of whatever, which will affect the global economy and therefore our economy. So yes, I can foresee that this is going to happen. This is exactly going to happen.
Prof, just hold on briefly for me. Frank, do we have Frank back with us? Okay, let's do Ben Boateng. So where you find yourself, do you have any of these safety hubs in the building where you are or close to you? How close is the closest safety hideout?
Oh, okay. The bomb shelters, you mean, right?
Yes, the bunk shelters.
Okay, yes. So I'll just say I'm a stone throw away from one of them, which is in Hostel 3. Luckily for us, our hostel for students has we have 3 of them. We have Hostel 3, 4, and 5, and I'm just a stone throw, maybe a 2 or 3 minutes walk away from that place. So yeah, that's the situation here.
Right. The food you have stored, how long do you expect that would last for you?
For us, I think maximum 5 days, I would say.
Maximum 5 days.
Yeah.
Engaging, now you are PRO for Nukes in Ukraine. Engaging your colleagues, what is the general feeling? How are they feeling? How are they coping? I mean, you appear as though from where you are, you're pretty organized. You have matters under control, at least as far as your personal situation is concerned. Is that the same picture for the rest of your colleagues?
Not exactly, because I think the situation is different in different cities. Like I'm saying, if I would be, there are cities where they would be calm, there are cities where they will not be that calm. So for my city, for example, now, if I talk to students, people are worried, and people, because of course we have seen the bomb here, so people are worried, and then people are seeking, should I say, safety and help. My point is not now even the bombing. What even hurts people the more is that they are not able to travel, because if there is a bomb in the city and then transport services are working, that means you can make a move from one place to the other and seek safety. But the issue now is that the intercity buses are not even working, and that's what even hurts people the more. So it looks like you are stuck in one place and then you don't know whether you are going or coming. I hope you get me. That will be for my city. In different cities, I think that different situations, like I mentioned earlier, that we have about 5 cities. Sumy, we have Kharkov, we have Dnipro, we have Kyiv, which is the capital city, and all that. So the general feeling in the city, truth to be told, I mean, there is a lot of panic. People are making calls. There's a lot of worry around. But what I can say is that in the street, like I say, the rumor that is outside that the street is on, how should I say, there's fighting in the street and all that. For me, I don't think that is true. From what I've spoken, the emergency meetings we have had the last 24 hours, even before I was just coming onto the show, there is no fighting in the street. Just that people are worried, in the sense that the thing is happening, but it looks like we can't leave the country, and we are not getting info from outside that maybe people are coming for us out to the different cities or different outside the country. Yeah.
Speaking of leaving the country, you've spoken about that state of emergency declared by President Volodymyr Zelensky, which also means your airspace has practically been shut. What are you hoping for? I mean, if you had the option of being evacuated to Ghana, would you take it?
100%. We'll take it 100% because right now like we said, we don't even know the nature of the situation. We don't know what is going to happen in these few hours ahead of us. So if we get the opportunity to evacuate every single Ghanaian, we will take it with both hands and feet.
Right, but we also know that it's just about, there are a little over 1,000 students, Ghanaian students in Ukraine. Yes. Only about 20 of you are maybe on scholarships that have ended up there. Yes. So it would be a pretty tricky endeavor, and you're spread across Ukraine, and Ukraine itself is a vast, swathe of land, if you like. So it's going to be a pretty complicated effort. As PRO of looks, in case that suggestion is made that we have to mop up all Ghanaians, and find maybe some specific places where all of you can come together for an evacuation, how easy or difficult do you feel that would be?
Well, before I come to that question, I think the present situation right now is that there has been a lot of movement from the eastern aspect of Ukraine to the western aspect. Right now, I can confirm 2 cities for you. Like I mentioned Lviv, because we know Lviv is a city in the west which is closer to Poland. And then there is Chernivtsi. Chernivtsi is also a city which is closer to Romania. So these are 2 cities where I can confirm that there has been a lot of influx of students, because if these are close to these places, these are basically the safe place for now. And we know Poland is a NATO-held region. And so people have the belief that if we are able to make movement to these places, then of course we will be safe. So right now there has been a lot of movement. People are chartering buses, and of course the price is skyrocketing, because if the bus is 500 in our currency, now it's 3,000. So mobilizing people will be tough, no 2 ways about that. But the issue is that people will have to be ready to spend money. Right now, we have spoken to the government, and then talks are ongoing, and hopefully the solutions will arrive soon, as soon in quote, as they have said. But we hope, for now, the advice we would give to people is that people should be ready to spend money, because that is the situation we find ourselves in. Something that is 500 should be 3,000. It could be 5,000. So getting people, truthfully, getting people to one place is going to be tough, because if we have to get people by various transports, then we need to be ready to spend a lot of cash in that direction. So that will be the problem. And also even finding these buses to go is also another problem. But gradually, from what we have heard, the various presidents are mobilizing people. I've heard a lot of influx of Ghanaian students into these 2 cities I mentioned, Lviv and Chernivtsi. So that is basically what
right. And the figures you're giving, 500 to about 3,000, that is corroborated by the international media portals, who have also said that something you would have got for about 400, 500, you get it for 2,000 or more. So it matches what you are saying. But just before I go to Frank on the line, what sort of communication have you got from Ghana, or at least our mission there, and has it been satisfactory for you?
Well, as I speak, we have 2 executives on the Ghanaian land. We have our General Secretary, Prince Danso Tenakwa, and we have our head of international relations and head of integration, Alpha, who is also on the line. Yesterday,
yesterday I engaged Prince, who made it into the country on Saturday. That. So yes.
Okay, I think we've had that form of communication with them. We have sent letters. We sent these letters earlier. We have been able to gather Google Docs forms, and then send that the data has been collated, so that the government and the relevant authorities will have an idea of the number of people that are here. And then we are also speaking through our honorary consular, Dr. Albert Kecha, to the embassy of Ghana in Switzerland. And then we are receiving information that things are moving. But the issue is that how fast will these things move? That is the issue. So if we talk about satisfactory, for that one, we are not satisfied. As far as we are concerned and our safety is concerned, we are not satisfied. We want to see action. And for talk, it will always be talk. But if we see action, then we know that the results are incoming.
All right. We have Frank back, another medical student in Ukraine. He joins us again. Frank, welcome back to the conversation. Just to wrap with you on a few matters. So do you have any shelter close to where you are that you can share with us so that in case of any emergency, you can go there? Do you have any shelter?
Please, as it stands now, the government has some bomb shelters that are located, but they are very, very old. So, the locations are not so clear. So sometimes getting to identify those bomb shelters are very difficult. But then the thing is, most of the hostels that we are in here to have underground facilities where we can hide in case of any blast. But as it stands now, we are trying to move to another city. We are trying to move to another country through another city, that's Lviv, which is close to the Polish border. So we the Ghanaians are mobilizing a bus to move there right now.
Right. And even as we talk about these shelters and all of that and getting into them, have you had to move from where you originally were? Or you're still in your institution, right?
No. Currently, some of us are in the medical hostel, and some of us too are in private apartments. So there will be a siren that will ring, and you have to run to the nearest shelter. But the truth of the matter is, the first day that the attack happened, we had one blast. But then when the blast happened, it was so sudden that when the siren rang, we couldn't go to any shelter. So we just have to run to the basements of our buildings. So that since then we've not had any blast in our city yet. So we've not moved to any shelter. We've not experienced that. We've not experienced it before, going to a shelter. Yeah.
I was just speaking to your colleague Ben Boateng, who is also a medical student, and he said that if he was told of any plan to evacuate, he would seize it with both hands and feet. If you were told today, though there is a state of emergency and airspace is closed, if you were told today that Ghana is evacuating all of you, would you seize that opportunity? Because you also have to continue with your studies. Would you seize that opportunity?
Yes, please. As it stands now, I don't think there will be any students in Ukraine that want to stay because the schools are not even teaching. Every institution is down now. Yes, some few schools are doing distance learning, but even with that, students are not attending class because everyone is scared. So what everyone is trying to do is to get out of this country. So the moment we hear the government has made any availability of a flight for us to evacuate, everybody will rush for that flight.
How is your family in Ghana, and maybe if you know of any other families for some of your colleague students, how have they been reacting?
Yes, the truth of the matter is our families are very worried, especially when they see the images on TV with the blast and the bombs and all that. They are so worried. And sometimes when we talk to them, we try to calm them down because it's sometimes the parents will have to be crying on phone and they want to help us, but there is no means. They won't send us money to come home, but it's very difficult even to retrieve money as it stands now. It's very difficult to retrieve money because most of the banking systems are down, and you can't use the Ukrainian currency outside the country. You would have to change dollars. And as I'm talking to you, there are no banks that are giving dollars out, nor any forex bureau giving dollars out as it stands now. So it's very, very frustrating for our parents, and it's not easy.
I know finding yourself in such a situation would be it would be nerve-wracking. It would be very uneasy for you to be in this. Are you afraid for your life, and how afraid are you? If I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid you are, what would you say?
Okay, so as it stands now, for me, I'm very scared because I don't know what will happen next. Nothing is predictable. So we are just placing our hope in God to try and help us, and also if there is any provision that the government can do, but we are very scared. On a scale of 1 to 10, I can say for me it's 10 out of 10 because it's very, very scary out here.
Your level of fear is 10 out of 10. That breaks my heart. That is. No one would want to face that. But Frank, have you heard of the e-levy?
Yes, please. We've heard of the e-levy.
So you know what it is, an electronic tax that government is hoping to implement. So just to cut to the chase, the finance minister has told us there's not much in our kitty, and even striking parties in the country, they can't do much. And yesterday on the floor of Parliament, just to brief you in case you don't know, the Deputy Majority Leader said that this gives even more reason for the e-levy to be backed, the e-levy that many Ghanaians as well have spoken against and said, we don't need it. What is your take on the e-levy? Because now it is said that if you want us to evacuate students from Ukraine, then support the e-levy. What is your take on the e-levy?
Okay, to be honest, I've heard about the e-levy, but then I don't know the details, like the details of what the e-levy entails, because we are not in Ghana as it stands now. We hear about it, like we see it on social media, people are against it, some are for it, but since we don't know the details, I don't know how to comment about it. But for where I stand, I think if the government can maybe help us, because if the e-levy is something that is being used as a means of which we can be evacuated, then it's very, very difficult, because this is between life and death. So I think, for me personally, I think they should try to help us.
Okay.
For the e-levy, I don't know how much students here know more about it. We really don't know much about the e-levy.
No, that is okay. I can understand that. Right before I go back to Prof with some very important questions, Ben, so your quick take on that as well. I don't know how much more you know about this electronic levy, but basically, you know of the service charge when you were in Ghana, the Momo. Yeah. So you perform a transaction, 1% is taken. It's taken. Exactly. Government is hoping to add another 1.5% to that. So let's say ordinarily 2.5% as an e-levy. And now it's being tied to evacuating you, at least per the Deputy Majority Leader. How does that make you feel? And would that get your support for the e-levy?
Well, I mean, how does that make me feel? I'm disappointed, number one. And then because now lives of people has been reduced to money. Now we are we are comparing a person's life to money. So that is what, like I'll say, break my heart. And if I hear this thing, then we begin to wonder what exactly, and the kind of support we should get from the government, right? If you were to compare the life of more than 1,000 people to e-levy, which is even still on the floor of Parliament, we haven't finished. If we finish it, when are they going to pay? And if they pay, when are they coming to evacuate us? These are all things that we need to look at. So if on the floor of Parliament, honorable members, someone comes out and says that, our lives, the evacuation measures is tantamount to our e-levy, then I begin to ask myself, wow, lives now have been compared to money. So it's shocking. It's really, really shocking. And in a situation where people are worried, and then we are looking for hope like a jolt of electricity to our hearts, but we receive this dashing blow to the floor, then we have to ask ourselves, maybe we would have to look at 2024 and see what we can do.
Maybe we may have to look at 2024 and see what we can do. Interesting. Let me come to Prof as well, Vladimir Antwi-Danso. And thank you so much, Prof, that you've been this patient with us, but we've had to get the different angles to the conversation. But it is crucial that we find out at this point, because some people have suggested it. We have a situation where to be a member of NATO, there are a lot of processes to follow. Ukraine is nowhere near that. Could there be any emergency form or format to get Ukraine into NATO at this point in time, which would then warrant an attack by the group, by the unit, on Russia? Could that happen? Is it a possibility? Do we have Prof still with us?
Hello?
Prof, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You were asking whether there are processes that should be speeded up for Ukraine to join NATO that would have warranted what has happened?
No. I am saying that Ukraine is not yet a member of NATO.
Yes.
But there has been talk in certain circles that maybe this could be escalated, that the processes, the long processes to be followed could be shortened, and that maybe, just maybe, Ukraine could be absorbed into NATO, which would then, of course, warrant, an attack from the group, because you attack one NATO member, you attack all of them. Is that, internationally speaking, a possibility?
Well, that could be a possibility, but in the midst of what is happening, it will be a little stupid to speed up the process so that NATO has the chance of coming in to support one of their own. I believe at this point what is needed is negotiation, and then to interrogate the NATO expansion eastward, and also to take into consideration Russian interest. The letter they wrote to the United Nations, the letter they wrote to the U.S., it's indicative of the very fact that they would never allow NATO's expansion to their doors. During the Cold War, the front line was Germany, East Germany. The West wanted to put Pershing 2 missiles in West Germany. The Russians retaliated by saying, we are putting SS-400, very powerful missile men, in East Germany. And then because of that, they saw the need not to escalate things, and the missiles were not planted there. I think this is what the Russians want. They want a situation where there is a buffer zone, nobody can attack each other. And I believe that the United Nations must take this stand and enforce so that there is this kind of understanding between NATO and Russia and its allies also. So for me, it is not in the interest of the world if NATO rather demands of a speeding up of the process so that they could come and help their own or whatever it is. I don't think that is the answer to each other.
My final bit to you, Prof. Final bit. Could this escalate in any way into World War III, as some have suggested?
World War III, let us not be thinking about it. It is scary. The amount of arsenals we have in the world will blow the world apart. In fact, will put the world into smithereens. Let nobody think about that. Let nobody in a foolhardy way say, we are so prepared. Nobody will win the war. The thermal nuclear powers, or what we have in the world, is that we can just destroy the whole world if there is a World War III. Nobody, like the missiles flying anywhere, just to destroy, so that nobody gets the chance of regrouping anywhere in any part of the world. Let's not think about it. Let's think of a process of silencing the gang, at least for now. Let not the West, let not Russia, let not China believe that we have it. And let me tell you, they have it. So, for me, a third world war is the end of the world. Hello.
Well, Prof, point well made there. We're so grateful that you joined us for the conversation, and we wish you the best of the day, sir. Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso joining us there for the conversation. He's an international relations analyst. We also have Frank Adoma and Ben Boateng, both medical students in Ukraine, who joined us for this conversation. We're grateful for your time, but don't you forget, we have a lot more coming up. We're going to be talking about UTAG up next, and following from there, we're going to take your opinions, your views about the major matters, topical matters that we've discussed this week. You can share your thoughts with us on social media and via the phone lines when we activate them. We'll be right back.